Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Citizen Representatives podcast. My name is Tyler, and I'm here with my friend Adam. Adam, did I get that right this time?
Yes, we are friends, Tyler. Thank you.
Well, okay, I kind of knew that, but I was mainly referring to our names. Did I get our names right? Sometimes I kind of space things, and I
I, th- I think yeah, you were Tyler, I was Adam. I think we're good.
okay. So we're here. Citizen Representatives is an organization. We're aiming to reduce corruption in politics by uniting as legal citizens to elect lawmakers with the iron-clad agreement that they will vote on bills according to a majority vote by citizens in their district or state. So I'm gonna chalk this up as a win for citizen representatives because I know that this bill was defeated through our efforts. And that bill was the HR1 voting bill that many regarded as a somewhat of a nationalization of the voting process, which I don't think that would have been a good idea. A lot of people are framing this as a defeat for civil rights, and I don't think it's necessarily that way. I just wanted to play a quick little clip before we go much further, just to see kind of the levels of propaganda that they were putting forth for this bill. So this is a video from Katy Perry and Orlando Bloom, who are apparently celebrities. I think Orlando Bloom was, I think he was a Hobbit or something, and Katy Perry is from the Amazon. I don't know. Again, I'm being silly.
Elfin magic.
He was the elf. He was Elf in the Christmas story. The elf.
Yes.
No.
That was a good
The Lord of the
comment.
Rings. Wow. The Lord of the Rings. Okay. So I'm being silly, but let's share this.
Let's hope this works.
We've got to tell him.
The fundamental purpose of our democracy is the freedom of our life.
Your pants
You are our only hope. The America you know doesn't exist in our future. Democracy is dead. We have no voice. The regime watches our every move.
It started when voter suppression ran wild all over America. The voting rights bills died in the Senate. Polling places closed. We lost our right to vote.
This future doesn't have to be. You have the power to change it. Save democracy while you can.
Call your senator now.
Tell Daisy we love her.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, wow.
It's pretty amazing. Like, I don't know if they volunteered for this or if they were paid for it, but I mean, it was some pretty good cinematography. Is that a word? I think it's a word. You know, the editing, the makeup, I mean, they're good actors. There's no doubt about that. So what's your take on this?
It was good production, but this is what I imagine happens if we continue on the course that we're on and if HR1 had been passed. So it's kind of ironic that they would put this out. It's exact opposite, but you know, that's just my view.
Well, why is that? Why is it that way right now? Why is it such that there are bills that you know, people think that are going to do one thing, and then some people think they're going to do the exact opposite? Why is it that way?
Well, you can't have the conversation for one, right? You can't debate. Like, okay, Orlando and Katie, what is democracy? What is a democratic society democratic small d? What does a democratic society look like? And they're not going to go there. They're just going, well, you're just racist. You just want to suppress votes. Like, no, I just want votes to be counted for actual citizens. It's hard to believe that's a problem, but apparently it is.
Yeah, the voter suppression that they're talking about, it's not, I don't see how it's actually voter suppression. And what it actually comes down to is they're trying to say that the voter suppression is requiring voter ID, which they say disproportionately affects people of color. Is that the right term?
Yeah.
African Americans, Latinos. Supposedly it disproportionately affects this group of people because they are not able to go and get IDs on their own. Of course, when you go and interview these people, they say, of course, I already have my ID, or I don't want to vote, or it's any one of these things. But requiring voter ID is not voter suppression. There are programs that will allow people, if they're not able to afford to get an ID, there are programs that will pay for those things. People can get a ride. I mean, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, like, to expect that, yeah, we've talked about this before, the bigotry of low expectation, that these people can't possibly make it to a voting booth. They can't possibly do what's been done for the last 250 years. So that's just I mean, you talk about racism. I mean, that's the ultimate, like, okay, these groups just aren't possibly capable of getting, there's no means for that. Like, no, I think I can name, probably off the top of my head, I bet I can name 1,000 people who would voluntarily donate time, money, energy to get real citizens the help they need to get a real ID and to get to the voting polls in a timely fashion. And so this is such a false notion that they put up. I mean, really, it's just they would just assume stuffed ballot boxes. That's what this comes down to. I don't think they actually believe this crap. I'm dead serious. I mean, that's what they want. They just want to stuff ballot boxes. They don't want any accountability. They just want, just believe us. We're the authoritative group. Just vote as we tell you because, we're right. It's just a bunch of crap.
I think people are wisening up to all the types of propaganda that are coming out. To the point, this video has 500,000 views, and there are 1.4 thousand likes and 5.9 thousand dislikes. So approximately 4 to 5 times more dislikes on the video than the likes. So maybe there is some light at the end of the tunnel. The levels of propaganda that the system is using right now are just beyond it's beyond crazy. They're sending literal CIA operatives on the news right now by name.
Yeah.
And normally it would be just they would hire these people behind the scenes and they would never talk about their associations. But now they're sending the former heads of the CIA, people who have been in the system forever, and now they're doing that. They're also doing this with the vaccines. They're doing lotteries. They're giving away Xboxes. They're giving away all sorts of these things to try to get people to comply with this. And Joe Biden has apparently by July 4th a 70% vaccination goal, and I think it's around 59%. So this really throws a wrench in the works of the people who want to force everyone to get the vaccine, because you can't feasibly have a business and turn away 40% of your population. And anyway, a lot of interesting things happening. Let's turn to an interesting article that I found on the interwebs, and I know that this subject is near and dear to your heart. I think you're probably a little bit more knowledgeable about this than I am. But this is solar panels bad for the environment? That's the question we ask. Now, solar panels, this is the headline of the article, and this was written by Michael Schellenberger, who wrote a book about, was it basically about nuclear, or was it, what was the general idea of the book?
I mean, it starts out in all kinds of, he goes through the history of this country and what we've done energy wise and where we're headed and how climate change came about as an issue to begin with, and his own personal interaction with that movement, that he was, firmly on board with the idea that we needed to change our behavior. And he's definitely concerned about the environment, and he's a believer in climate change, but he lists it as not the number one issue facing humanity right now. Like, he's looked at the data, he's seen in process and in action what has happened to the world. And so he documents this, especially its effect on third world countries when we try and regulate climate policy on these countries. It's particularly harmful to them. And he talks about the different types of energies. He goes through each one. He talks about the energy densities and what we need to sustain humanity. He talks about things like food and population. He goes into all kinds of issues. And in the end, he brings it home with nuclear power, where he says this is the answer. No matter where you are on the spectrum of climate change, whether you're you believe it's apocalyptic and we're going to die in 10 years, or whether you are pretty skeptical and you just don't think it's that big of a deal, I think all of us care about the environment, right? We want to take care of it. He says, this is the future. This is how we bring energy to the world, change lives, bring third world countries up to a higher standard eventually after they develop their own resources and go through their own sort of evolution of energy. This is where we need to be. And he makes a very cogent argument for all of that. And so, yeah, that's a long answer to your question, but he tackles all sorts of questions, including, renewables, wind and solar. And he goes into detail about how poor, I mean, they're nice ideas, but we're not making it. They're not energy dense enough to sustain the world and to meet our goals of actually not only providing energy, but helping the environment. So yeah, this is just one tiny piece of what that book covers.
So, playing devil's advocate for a moment, and you may not know this, is he paid by the nuclear industry? Do you know if he receives any sort of funding from them, or is this something that he arrived to on his own?
I don't know if he gets any funding from those groups, but here's an interesting tidbit. And I may have talked about this before. Is the funding of the renewable energies actually comes from gas money, and a lot of these politicians get their money and who advocate for renewables, wind and solar, from these gas companies. And the reason is they know that renewables are never going to give the earth its energy consumption demand. They're never going to meet that without gas. You still need gas and oil. And so gas and oil give money to these groups to promote them because they don't want nuclear power to supplant gas and oil eventually. And then Schellenberger says, look, gas and oil are fine. I mean, we've learned how to burn coal cleaner. We've learned how to, to use what's the natural gas, right, is a cleaner burner and still energy dense. So we learned how to use these fuels, and they're mediums for transition. But eventually, we need to go to nuclear. And if we'd done that like we started out in the 50s to the 70s, before all of the hype and the misinformation came about, and the stigma that befell nuclear power, we were headed in that direction, and now we've lost our way, and it's too bad. So I don't know where I don't know that he has money from those sources. That's something that we could look into, but he certainly gives a lot of information that I think is worth anybody considering.
So the subtitle of the article is solar panels will create 50 times more waste and cost 4 times more than predicted. New Harvard Business Review study finds. Now this kind of hurts my feelings a little bit. I don't know if that's the right wording, but I really like the idea of solar panels. It promotes a certain level of sovereignty that I'm going to have solar panels on my roof. I'm going to stick it to the man. I'm going to produce my own power, and I'm not going to have to rely on anyone else. So there's a certain part of me that is really enamored with that type of idea. And now once you kind of delve into the details, the research is finding that they're not lasting nearly as long as they said that they would. All of the solar panel manufacturers out there, they say these will last up to 25 years. Their guarantees, their warranties are 25-year warranties. And what they're finding in practice is they're not lasting as long as that, sometimes 10 to 15 years. So then you have these panels that you have to dispose of. And by some estimates, and I don't know how they quantify this, but he says 3 years, this is the Schellenberger person. 3 years ago, I published a long article at Forbes arguing that solar panels weren't clean, but in fact produced 300 times more toxic waste than high-level nuclear waste. Okay, so there are heavy metals in these that once they go into the landfill, and these heavy metals and other things are carcinogens. They leach off of the solar panel once they're broken up, and then they get into the earth and are spread about, so to speak. And so that's like, it's like, oh man, how do we deal with that? What are we supposed to do with this? Like,
well,
I don't know.
And the other part of this, and I don't know that this article addresses it or that this study even addresses it, but just look at the footprint of a solar panel and the battery on the other end that tries to, our batteries are obviously insufficient to, when you account for nighttime and weather changes and different climates, to where we can actually capture that energy, because the energy is so diffuse, right? And you need so many solar panels, and then you need so many batteries. But look at the footprints of the solar panels and the batteries themselves just to be made. They're shipped across the earth, right? Well, how do they get shipped? Not by solar panel energy. These aren't steam powered solar panel boats.
It's by diesel,
so
probably.
We're burning emissions as we ship these parts. They're made with different metals from all over the world. You get all those places and you put it together here, and then it has to go to another place to be assembled. The footprint may actually be even more than what we imagine. I mean, some people have done this with like electric cars, right? They've said that, that's a nice idea. It would be great if we could run on but still electricity comes from coal, number one. But number two, by the time you assemble this car and you get a car here, its footprint's already larger than what the life of a gas car would have been if it were produced in Detroit, Michigan. So I like the idea of solar panels too. I mean, what a great source of energy. I mean, the great energy of our solar system, but yet we just haven't been able to harness that energy in a way that makes it energy dense enough to support our needs.
So another kind of twist on this, not a twist, but an additional layer to this is, let's say you have a solar panel, it's kind of worn out, so to speak. Well, instead of throwing it in our landfill, that solar panel can be resold, and it can be resold to another country. So, and then it's going to get disposed of over there instead of here in our landfill. So it's kind of an end around of the environmental impact of the
so
end
horrible.
life of
I mean,
those
this is another. Third world countries, like we're always trying to help the people of third world countries and different backgrounds, and yet they're the ones that always get shit upon, right? by our policies, because seriously, they have to, their best means of fuel production in a lot of these countries is wood, which is the worst kind of energy for the environment. It puts more CO2 in the atmosphere than any other kind of energy consumption. But they're reliant on that because we won't let them develop hydro. We won't let them mine their resources, their coal. We won't let them drill for oil. And so you don't allow those countries to develop, and you keep them in a third world state. They don't get infrastructure. They don't get education by as a result of improving their infrastructure and their economies. And so this is just another way we shit on these countries. Sorry.
So now this doesn't mean that, and I don't think you hate solar necessarily, the idea of solar, or the idea of harnessing the sun, the power of the sun. There are probably technologies out there that aren't wasteful, that can be used differently. I mean, that's just we just haven't found it yet. Or maybe it is found. Maybe like so many of these inventors that you hear on YouTube, they were able to burn water and create unlimited energy, and then the government killed them.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think their uses.
That was a joke.
Isn't that true? But I was going to say, to your point, I mean, yeah, there are uses for solar. Like if you're in a remote area doing research up in Alaska or some desert, the Gobi Desert or something, and small communities, yes, there may be there are uses for solar, and there may have been, even in urban situations, there may be good situations for solar, but the technology hasn't gotten there, and I don't know that it's hopeful enough. When you've got this other energy that's clean burning, 100% clean burning, and super energy dense, more so than gas and coal by an incredible percent. And so why have we not been using nuclear all along is just baffling to me. There's so much fear and misinformation around it.
So the next step so now we're going to kind of switch to nuclear. We're going to talk about nuclear for a moment. Now we kind of trashed on Bill Gates a lot. He wants to darken the sun. He wants to send up a bunch of, aluminum in the air. He wanted to darken the skies so that the sun didn't beat down on us so hard in an effort to combat global warming. Now that's one of the most idiotic ideas I've ever heard of. And kind of, what's the word? Megalomaniac? Tell me how that's pronounced.
I don't know how it's actually.
Megalomaniac. I don't think I've read that word a bunch of times, but I don't think I've ever said it out loud. So we had some technical difficulties, but Bill Gates, this is one of the good things that I have seen from him. So, well, of course, the Windows was a big deal. Okay, so I'm using Windows right now. So I don't know. We'll save a discussion on Bill Gates for another time, specifically about him as a person. But the idea that he's bringing forth now, this is new in the news, pretty new. Bill Gates and Warren Buffett have a joint collaboration on something they are calling the natrium nuclear reactor. And I think this is it's kind of a hybrid salt reactor. There's kind of a difference in the nuclear reactors. There's the ones that were in the beginning that created steam directly from the nuclear fuel. Now they're using molten salt to they create the heat and heat up directly the salt, which then in turn can create the steam and other things and turn the turbines and do things like that. So it's a much safer technology because it's so less prone to runaway reactions. And so this is a new kind of test that they're doing in Wyoming. They're building so the molten salt reactor is being built in Wyoming. This is a collaboration with Bill Gates and a company owned by Warren Buffett, Pacific Corp. I believe is the company. I think it's a subsidiary of that company. So this is a 345 megawatt sodium fast reactor is what they call it. And they use molten salt energy storage. And so like we were differentiating between the original type of reactors and these new molten salt, one of them being thorium. I don't know if they're using thorium specifically in this reactor.
Well,
are you
the
aware,
article
or what,
suggested
what
that
do
they
you,
were
what do
maybe
you know about this one?
going to use uranium, but that was just what the article said. There was a note actually at the end of the article that said, they may be using uranium. Now, yeah, thorium is the traditional fuel used for molten salt. And I was going to say molten salt reactors, this concept has been around since the 1950s. And people have tried to build these reactors, but they've always been supplanted by the anti-nuclear movement or other issues and considerations. But yeah, this is a fantastic idea if it's true and if everything plays out. I mean, I don't care. I think all forms of nuclear power should be experimented with and done. I think they're safe. I think it's safe to do. You can't take a spent nuclear rod and turn it into a nuclear weapon. So that's just not a concern. And then most of these facilities are completely locked down in such a way that you would never have meltdowns. I mean, what happened at Chernobyl was a 1 in a zillion thing, and even the aftermath of that was highly exaggerated. But anyway, aside from that, I mean, molten salt is a fantastic idea. I've been a proponent of that for a long time. So if they're really doing this, I think it's fantastic, and I think it's a great idea. I hope they do it, and I hope other people replicate it, and they're able to get the nuclear footprint going again.
The nuclear has several obstacles. Number one being the environmentalists. The environmentalists get in their own way sometimes, and because of some, the Fukushima, the 3 Mile Island, which was they're very newsworthy type events. Chernobyl, yeah, they were kind of pretty bad, but they're working on the technology. So I mean, you've got the environmentalists who really don't like it at all. Then you have the unspent fuel issue. And once you really get into how that is stored, and it's really not that big of an issue. You put them in encased concrete and things like this, and they'll just sit there for forever, basically. Those things won't disintegrate. And the newer type reactors, even if that was a concern of yours, I think the newer thorium ones, the radioactivity the half-life is much shorter. So they disintegrate, the radioactivity disintegrates much quicker than the traditional.
And the molten salt, they're self-cooling, right? The molten salt. The issue between using hydrogen uranium-based reactors is they can burn hotter, they can produce more energy. But you can, with the molten salt, you can actually increase the temperature and burn it at a higher rate to compete with that offset. But they're inherently self-cooling. The salt cools the fuel, so and less radioactive. So it's a win-win.
Another one of the benefits of this thorium and the molten salt is the salt is liquid in a much broader range of temperatures. So it doesn't turn into a gas until super, super high temperatures. So it melts at something like 300 Kelvin, and then it's still liquid for the range was like 500 degrees. It was a big range. So you can heat it much hotter and maintain that energy over a longer period of time. The water type ones have a much narrower band that they are able to work in. So another thing that is kind of holding back the nuclear is just the cost of implementation. Now, this is, once you start getting government regulations involved, it always increases the cost. When you're dealing with solar panels and things, that's kind of a straightforward technology that on the surface, everyone gets behind because, solar. Let's just do solar. They're just made out of silicon. and glass, and but that's not actually the case, as we're learning now with the Schellenberger article, and you probably knew that long before I did. But the kind of the waste that goes behind them, they're just on the surface, they're a much easier sell, these solar panels, and so the cost of those per megawatt hour is at least up front is much lower than the nuclear. So the nuclear, the initial upfront cost is more, and because of regulations and safety things, and I'm for safety in nuclear, but there are some of these kind of obstacles that are in the way of nuclear, and I don't think they're not able to be overcome. They just are making it so instead of having this basically free energy starting in the 80s or 90s or whenever it should have been, now we're still paying, we're paying 12 cents a kilowatt hour here. And then if you use more than your allotment, then it goes on up from there. And then people in California are paying significantly more than that.
Yeah, no, we should have been, we were ready to do this back in the 70s, right? The 60s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. We were building these, and then it hit a wall in the 70s. I mean, you had the China Syndrome movie that came out right at the same time as the 3 Mile Island accident, which really, nobody died from that. There wasn't any, these incidents were so blown out of proportion, all of them, but they all happened kind of on top of each other and have just continued to fuel this anti-nuclear sentiment among the public. So I think it was a matter of re-educating the public about the safety of these facilities and how much it will actually change any issue on energy, whether you're concerned about the environment solely or whether you're concerned about feeding the world and propelling our needs. It really resolves all of that.
And it also resolves the Bitcoin energy issue.
Amen. That's right.
I know we always have to talk about Bitcoin because there's such a attack on Bitcoin right now, and I don't want to go too deep into this, but they're saying there's so much energy that goes into securing the Bitcoin network that it's hurting the environment, and we're going to boil the oceans.
Yeah.
And so if we can get basically free energy or next to nothing energy, then we can also free the world through Bitcoin.
Yeah.
My humble opinion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And one of the other concerns that people have is, well, it's going to cost so much to get these reactors up and running. And it's like, well, look at the plan from Congress that they want to 10 trillion or more, 50 trillion. I don't know how many trillions they want to spend for renewables. Well, fine. Let's just spend that on nuclear power plants, and I'm sure there's plenty of private industry that would just jump at the chance to build nuclear facilities. So we're fine. We can do this economically. We can, if we can do renewables at a price tag that's off the charts, we can do nuclear for sure.
So there are some other kind of on the cusp nuclear ideas that are coming out, and some of those they're calling modular nuclear reactors, and they're talking about making these. They're smaller, obviously, and kind of the benefit of these are they can be made in a factory and shipped anywhere, and so you can make them in different configurations and kind of stack them together to make bigger arrays of power generation. And so I think that's another promising area that technology is focusing on, and it's going to be really interesting to see if they'll allow this, because we know we've had nuclear reactors in subs and in aircraft carriers and things for a long time, and they're basically, at least we haven't heard of any issues with those. Maybe there have been, but we haven't heard of those, and they're generally reliable. I don't know that they're necessarily the same technology as the ones in subs and the ones that they're working on now. The stuff that they're working on now is probably decades newer and things like that. But you heard of the joke? What happened? Okay, let me. What happens when you? How does the joke go? You can tell I'm not a comedian. When you scratch, environmentalists are green on the outside but red on the inside. I guess that's kind of the joke. They're green and red, meaning communist on the inside.
Sure.
Okay. Sorry, I botched that joke. Just give me a kind of a obligatory laugh. Thank you. It helps my feelings. So there was this Twitter guy, and he was doing a kind of a critique of some of these environmentalists. And this is actually something that we're finding to be true. We're going to end on this. One huge drawback of nuclear power is it doesn't dismantle systems of oppression. It only produces clean energy. This makes it unsuitable for solving the climate crisis, which isn't just about the environment. So that was by Zach Cantor, and he is for nuclear. Okay, so this guy he's critiquing kind of the Greta Thunberg types, and this came from an article in the Project Syndicate, which is they were talking about systems of oppression. And let me see if I can find the actual quote, if I don't have to. They're talking about doing a climate strike. That action must be powerful and wide-ranging. After all, the climate crisis is not just about the environment. It is a crisis of human rights, of justice, and of political will. Colonial, racist, and patriarchal systems of oppression have created and fueled it. We need to dismantle them all. Our political leaders can no longer shirk their responsibilities. So what is it that attracts, what is the connection between this environmentalism and this just desire to completely destroy the systems that are in place that seem to be working?
Yeah, I mean, it's like as soon as you present a solution that would fix a problem that they've identified, they've got to come up with a derivative of that issue to continue it, because they got to be depressed. They got to think, everything's oppressive, and they got to have a reason to wake up every morning in an emotional funk, and a lack of desire to actually get on with life, and the only way they get out of that, I mean, Schellenberg actually talked about this, how depressed children are, especially over climate change, that they absorb all this hype that goes on with the climate talk, and the only way they get out of their depression, if they do, is to become activists. And so we have this generation of activism, and I think it's fueled by more. You got to have the negativity. You got to create the issue. If you can't really find an issue to fight for, you've got to create it out of nothing, and you need that negativity to sustain the activism, because that's the only thing that makes you actually feel good. Is doing something, fighting for something, even, and it doesn't matter whether it's logical or not.
I think to some extent, I mean, I do think that some of these systems that are prevalent in the world today, I think some of them do need to kind of fall by the wayside. But the free market isn't one of them. We tend to, I say the media tends to conflate the free market with systems of oppression. And they confuse the two. There's because, and in many ways, the system is set up for people to not be able to succeed. But that's not the fault of the free market itself. There's the government that gets involved, and there's all sorts of factors.
That's the main point right there, is that anytime you try to put the finger of governance on an issue, you ultimately end up creating a much bigger pile of manure, right? It exacerbates problems that we already have. And whereas if you let the natural flow of evolution and supply and demand and education just naturally evolve these processes and these systemic issues of, tyranny, power structures, if you let that evolve naturally, it will inevitably just go by the wayside. These things become defunct over time. But as soon as you try and solve everything, those solutions never work.
Well, so many people feel helpless, and they're propagandized to believe that because of their skin color, or because of where they were born, or because of this or because of that they can't succeed. And so they have it in their mind that they can't, and so they want things provided for them then. If they're not able to, because of those circumstances that they were born into, if they're not able to succeed because of what somebody else is doing, though, they want now they want to be provided for. And that's what is so attractive to, that's why communism is so attractive to people, and socialism, because now they are, they're helpless, but now someone is going to help them. And so they become activists. They become people who basically hate themselves. They hate other people because of other people's work ethic. And now people are being made to hate each other because of their race. And that goes, we're not going to really delve into this right now, but the critical race theory is basically to make white people feel guilty about themselves, to give up their place in life. They were born into a system that rewarded them and brought others down. And it's a really pernicious kind of idea that you have no ability to improve your lot in life, that you are stuck where you are, that other people are out to get you, and it's just it's a really corrosive idea that really has no place in our society. Really interesting discussion today. Do you have any final thoughts, Adam?
No, I think we covered it all. Thank you for letting me go off on nuclear power and climate and all the fun issues there. I don't pretend to know a ton about it, but I'm a big believer in that is the way forward, no matter where you are on the climate spectrum.
We're definitely on, or in a point of tension, so to speak. There's so many things coming together right now that putting pressure on things, that I'm hoping that through this and after it's over, that humanity comes out on top, because it can definitely go the wrong way. There could be all sorts of things. I don't really want to end on kind of a negative light, but it can go both ways. And I think it's up to us to work to make sure that we have our freedom intact once it's done, that we're able to make our own decisions, that we're able to improve our lot in life, that we can vote for people who we want to. It's not going to end up like Katy Perry and Orlando Bloom say that they did at the beginning, that because this one voting bill didn't pass, that now in 50 years we lost our ability to vote.
Well, no, it would be the exact opposite if you allowed their philosophy to. That's the irony of that video, right?
Let anyone and everyone vote, and there's no kind of voting controls at all. There's a I don't know if it's a fine line, but there is a differentiation that you have to make between just letting anyone, having no controls over anything, or being a little bit more careful about who is actually voting, making sure that they're legal citizens, and besides making sure that they're legal citizens and have the ability that they're legally able to vote, meaning they're not a felon or have lost their voting rights. I don't see any sort of legislation that is curtailing that in any way, and any kind of argument to the contrary is, I don't think, an up and up argument. So, yeah, a lot of things we've covered today. I think that solar. I'm hoping that they can make some breakthroughs in solar panels of some sort that aren't as toxic for the environment, because I do think, I mean, I would love to have solar panels. The cost of solar panels is coming down. It's coming down. It's coming down. The general curve of that technology is coming down, making it more affordable for people. I would love it if those would last longer and not be toxic for the environment once they need to be retired. I do also think that it's important that we develop nuclear, and that's for most people, I think that's the best way going forward. And I'm hopeful that we can, with technology and with the science that is being worked out right now, that we're able to put that into practice. So this has been another episode of the Citizen Representatives Podcast. Again, we come together as legal citizens to elect representatives with the iron-clad agreement that they will vote on bills according to the will of the people through a vote that we would do over the internet. It's a thing that we're working on. Please help by sharing the video. Please like the video, like the page, share the ideas with your friends. You can also visit our website, citizenrepresentatives.org, and we really appreciate your time, and we will catch you next time.